We are back. Well, the human population is currently sitting around 8 billion people. And when you hear a figure like that, you might think, well, nothing to worry about. But we are actually facing an unprecedented decline in population.
So with birth rates dipping around the world, we wanted to dig into the impacts with our next guest. He is the author of Empty Planet and the CEO of Ipsos, Darrell Bricker. Welcome to The Social.
Thanks for having me on.
Let's start off broadly, Darrell. What situation do we currently find ourselves in terms of population decline?
We have about 8 billion people in the world today. That seems like an awful lot. Yeah. Back in 1950, it was only 2 billion. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we're just going to galloping into the future. But that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is we're probably going to peak in the next 20, 30 years, and then the population is going to start rapidly declining.
Okay, why?
Yeah.
Because we've stopped having kids.
Ah.
And I can give you all the statistics, but everybody who's here in the audience, think about your own family, think about your kids, think about your grandkids and how many kids they're having in their families. And you know what I'm saying is true.
Yeah.
Now, what is really interesting is that this isn't just happening in Canada, it's happening around the world.
Mm-hmm. Is this, if we look back in history, has this ever happened like this before? Is this a usual phenomenon?
No, we're the first generation in the history of the world that has said that Charles Darwin is wrong. We're not competing to create the next best generation. In fact, we think it's somebody else's job.
Wow.
That just sort of hit something in this old clunky head of mine. That's very interesting. So it is because we're having less children. But you might have said this, but I want to go back to it. Is that on a global scale or is it more regional?
No, it's global.
Everyone is having less kids around the world.
So if we look at the two biggest countries in the world, India and China.
Yeah.
Now, you would think both of them have a lot of people, and you'd be right. Both of them are about 1.4 billion people. Actually, India just passed China as the world's most populous country, and you think it's because they're having lots and lots of kids. But in order to just replace the number of people dying every year in your country, you need to have a birth rate of about 2.1. So that's the figure to keep in your head, 2.1. So every woman in that country has, during her lifetime, 2 kids and a little bit extra for those who don't make it to adulthood. In China today, the fertility rate is 1.
Wow.
In India, the fertility rate is 1.9. So in this century, China is going to lose half of its population, and India is going to lose about 330 million people, which is the same size as the population of the United States. And I'm telling you this because nobody pays attention to this, and it's going to be a huge issue as we go through the course of this century.
Okay, let's dive into that now, because anytime we've ever talked about overpopulation, and I think probably in the context of the environment and resources, it's always been framed as a negative thing. Overpopulation is a bad thing. So how is it that you're framing declining population as, like, it's a positive for the environment, though, right?
Yeah, sure it is. I mean, if you believe that there's a correlation between the number of people that we have on the face of the earth and climate change, for example, then you're looking at this information and you're saying, great. But anything to do with the economy is going to be rough. Anything that has to do with public services is going to be rough. And just keep in mind that not only is the population going to shrink, it's also rapidly aging as it shrinks. So the average Canadian when I was growing up in the early 1960s was about 24 years of age. Today, the average Canadian is about 42. So we're really rapidly aging, not just that the population is getting to the peak where it's going to shrink, but what's left is going to be old and older every year and less capable of reproducing itself because we only really create people the old-fashioned way.
Okay, you mentioned the economy. Why is this going to be bad for the economy?
It's going to be bad for the economy for 2 reasons. One, if the population isn't growing, then the economy isn't growing. So going from 2 billion in 1950 to 8 billion today in 2025, what's driven that growth is the growth of the population. So if that stops, we've got a problem. And then the second thing is old people don't buy a lot of stuff. So you buy a lot of stuff when you're starting your life out. You buy your first home, you buy your first car, you buy all the appliances that you need, you buy the things for the kids when you're starting to build your family. Older people are holding on to what they have and not participating in the economy the way that younger people do. So those two things coming together create a lot of problems for economic growth.
Okay, so here's the thing. It's not like you're going to sit down and start forcing people to have children. So what is a realistic solution?
Well, there really is none. I mean, every place that we've tried in the world, we want to interpret this as kids are too expensive, or there's the motherhood penalty in the workplace, and all those things are true. But every country that's gone really far in trying to deal with this has only been able to slow it down. It's not been able to reverse it. But what I would say is that anything that we can do to help parents of children, to make it possible for them, if they want to have kids, we should be doing. Anything that we can do to make it easier for mothers, to make the potential mothers, to make the choice to be mothers, if they choose it, we should be doing. Because those things are all going to be positive, not just for those families, but for society in general.
Oh my God, I have so many questions. But is immigration not a viable solution for this issue in a place like Canada?
Well, in the short term it is. I mean, that's how Canada has been dealing with this situation. So we would probably be going into population decline right now if it wasn't for immigration. But immigration is extremely politically difficult in most parts of the world. So the mathematics make sense, but the politics are difficult.
Can I ask, in the reverse, I'm presuming there are some places in the world whose economies cannot support the number of people because of overpopulation. So wouldn't it follow that a decrease could benefit some of those economies, or no?
Yeah, the only places that you're really looking at that kind of situation are places like Africa, which still does have above replacement rate birth rates, but they're falling quickly too.
Okay.
So this is not just an individual country thing, it's a human species thing. And that's an important thing to remember, folks. We are a species, we're like any other species in the world. And if we decide that we're not going to participate in creating the next version of us, then it doesn't happen.
Okay, this is a bit of a curveball question. So we've been seeing a lot in the news of a guy named Elon Musk, and people might remember very recently in the news this was him bringing one of his, I think, 13 kids into the Oval Office, and you say that this actually ties into the conversation we're having today. How the heck does that guy, his son, tie into this convo?
Well, if there's anybody talking more about population change than me, population decline in the world these days, it's Elon Musk. And it's something he's been banging on about quite a bit. And this is an attempt by him to kind of normalize the presence of children in more of our lives. And you see J.D. Vance is doing a very similar kind of thing in his situation. And I'm not saying anything supportive of this. I mean, you can think what you want about it, but what it's showing is that this issue is going to move from being a conversation about the numbers into a conversation about the politics of what we do about this. So when J.D. Vance was talking about childless cat ladies in the last presidential election in the United States, it was a thing, and it plays into what we're talking about here. And a great visual of somebody trying to change the narrative on this is what Elon Musk was doing, and we're watching J.D. Vance do a very similar thing.
Oh, wow. Maybe they could start with changing their maternity leave policies in the United States of America. But anyway.
There you go.
Just saying. Darrell, fascinating conversation. Thank you for all of this. Really, a lot of food for thought. Wow. Okay, if you are fascinated by this, and I'm sure you are, you can pick up Darrell's book called The Empty Planet, and you can dive deeper into this issue. Let's take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Hey, you, come a bit closer. We've got so many more must-see interviews, spicy debates, lifestyle tips, and pop culture moments. So subscribe to our channel by tapping the logo below and don't miss out.